Hello everyone and welcome back to the F2 show by Inside F2. Formula 2 visited Baku again this weekend for round number 12 of the season. Always love going to Baku. It was a good one, wasn't it? Formula 2 journalists Aaron Harper and Martin Lloyd with me to reflect on this one. And Aaron, Baku, year on year, Baku, Formula 2, that combination just works so nicely, didn't it?
Always finds a way to deliver, doesn't it? When we hit the streets of Baku with F2 cars, it's a tricky circuit, high speed. There's a compromise between giving yourself mechanical grip in the middle sector and getting through the castle section well, and actually having straight line speed, so you're not just driving with a parachute down the main straight. And it's tricky to get it right. And then once you get to the braking zones, it's tricky to get it stopped. So it always throws up some exciting action, lots of overtakes, and I always enjoy it.
And Martin, we've got loads to talk about. We've got incidents to talk about, dating all the way back to qualifying on Friday. It started straight away, didn't we, with 3 incidents in qualifying. As Aaron said, we had plenty of overtaking. We've had a rookie doing well, and we've had a championship contender win the race. Lots to talk about, lots of action all weekend, wasn't there? It was good.
Yeah, it was all going on in Formula 2. Went from the brilliant on Sunday to the kind of farcical on Friday and everything in between. It was a very strange weekend in a lot of ways because realistically in qualifying, you didn't get to see the grid order in terms of who was fastest and who was slowest because there weren't enough opportunities to get laps in. And so it made for a bit of a weird one in that sense, but very, very exciting all the way through.
Absolutely. And I know you were both on the press conferences this weekend, so we'll delve into some of that information if we can a bit later on. And we're going to be talking about Dino Beganovich's sprint race win. We're going to be talking about Josh Dirkson's best weekend in Formula 2 so far this season, probably. As I said at the top, we're going to be talking about Martinia Stenshaw, an eventful debut weekend for him. And we're going to be talking about much more as well. But shall we start with Jack Crawford winning the feature race, sticking it on pole as well, which I think is a really important thing to talk about given his up and down qualifying this season. I think, getting it on pole was the start of a really good weekend for him. He was, a little way off of Leo Fornaroli before the start of the weekend. The gap's down to 19 points. Championship back on, Aaron? Is that fair to say for Jack Crawford?
Definitely. I mean, we've got 4 races remaining over 2 rounds and anything can happen. We've seen how quickly it can turn from one driver to another. At one point we had 5 or 6 drivers in the hunt for this championship. We're now down to 3 with a bit of realisticness in there. You could count perhaps Richard Verschoor as a very, very, very outside shot, some 40 points behind. So, I think it's championship game on, especially for Jack Crawford. Difficult weekend for Luke Browning, but getting that pole position, like you say, for Jack was the perfect start for him because it set him up for a really good weekend. He's had sort of boom or bust recently. He'd go and score heavily, double podium at Hungary, but no points the next time out in Monza. And that was after no points in Spa either. So he really needs to sort of find that consistency now in those final 2 rounds and deliver points across all 4 races and hope that it's enough to close the gap on Fornaroli. He does need a little bit of misfortune to fall Fornaroli's way, or he needs to win both feature races at the Canter, and Fornaroli has to have a really difficult Sunday race. So it's definitely on. And I think this weekend showed that he is using that experience and he's not getting too worried, and he's banking on, I know how to do this. I've been here before. I've been around the block. Fornaroli hasn't with some of these circuits. He hasn't been to Qatar. He did do Abu Dhabi at the end of the season last year. But I think Jack Crawford is banking on his experience to get him through here. And I thought that showed out in the race in that he dropped down to 3rd. He didn't panic. You might have seen some other drivers try and wrestle their way back up to 2nd immediately. And Crawford did. He just straight lined himself past Gabriele Mini, but he waited And even when he lost the pit stop sequence, he went in second, came out second, even though he got ahead of Fornaroli, who he was behind. He still just played the patient game. I mean, he had the pace, so he had confidence in that sense, but I thought it was a really mature drive, really thoughtful drive, and he did just enough to hang on at the end, which was really impressive.
No, I totally agree. And I was just looking at Championship just a minute ago. He's had 4 non-point scoring rounds this season. No driver has ever won the championship with 4 non-point scoring weekends. So he's still got work to do. Fornaroli and Brown and arguably his two title contenders have scored in every single round. So interesting season for Jack Crawford. I think the next couple of rounds are going to be really, really crucial for him in Qatar and Abu Dhabi. He needs to be at the front winning races for both of those rounds, didn't he, Martin? We'll come back to the title fight in a minute, but were you impressed with Jack Crawford's performance both in qualifying on Friday and in the feature race on Sunday?
Yeah, I think especially on Friday, with Baku coming into it with the history of Formula 2, with how the track layout is, we know that there's a possibility of red flags. Before he'd even got his pole lap in, Amaury Cordial had his slightly strange incident at turn 14, I think it was, where he just lost the car. And so you kind of thought, well, there's probably going to be more red flags later on here. He put in a really solid lap. He was 4/10 quicker than anyone else at the time, and Fornaroli got much closer later on. But I think putting in that benchmark, getting in the second fastest time in practice, there was an element of luck involved because there were 2 red flags that meant no one could do a second run. But you can guarantee Crawford would have been right up there if there was a second run and it was representative with everyone equally getting their laps in before a red flag. So I think it was very impressive on Friday. And then on Saturday, he comes through in the sprint race, finishes 4th, takes solid points. And then in the feature race, I completely agree with Aaron's point. Sometimes, especially in F2 and F3, you don't necessarily see that patience. Sometimes you see drivers think, "Well, I've got to get past now," but this is not a championship where it's like Moto 3 or F3 to an extent, where it's pass or be passed all the time. You've got that bit of time. And I think Crawford knows that. He used that experience and he used it really well. But when he had the opportunity to get past many, he did it twice. As you say, when he lost out in the pits, he was still able to get through, and he didn't look too threatened until Josh Dirkson came from nowhere. He'd saved his tyres magnificently towards the end of the race. I think one more lap, Crawford might have been in a spot of bother. But again, a masterful drive from someone who I think we've come to expect it from now, given his performance level in the last season and a half in Formula 2.
Yeah, totally agree. He's already confirmed that he won't be coming back to Formula 2 next year, so it's all or nothing for Jack Crawford in this last couple of rounds in terms of the championship. Let's talk about that, because he closed the gap on current championship leader Leo Fornaroli. 19 points is the gap now. A big mistake from Fornaroli in the feature race, obviously hitting the back of Alex Dunn, and we don't usually see mistakes from Leo Fornaroli. Is that the pressure starting to build, Aaron, or is that a genuine mistake that could have happened at any point all season, and it just happens to be this weekend that he's made that mistake?
I think it's more the latter. I think it's just one of those mistakes that happens, and I also think it's one of those mistakes that's inevitable when you're in a championship fight. I mean, he just braked a little bit too late, lost a little bit of downforce on the front wing, and just booped into the back of Alex Dunn, and no harm was done in terms of damage to either car, and
no harm was done.
Yeah,
very good.
There was a bit of a pun there. I was thinking in my head as I was coming to that.
Disagree. Alex Dunn would disagree. By the way, he said there was plenty of damage done. So
no, I was trying to avoid that sort of phrase, but in the end, I just fell into the trap. It was a bit too easy. But yeah, I mean, obviously not ideal for Alex Dunn, who was driving a very good race up until that point and continued to do so afterwards. But it was the first sort of real error that we've seen Leo make this season. And he kind of got away with it, to be honest. I mean, I think back to Hungary, where he sped in the pit lane and picked up 5 seconds, but he negated that because he had the clear air and he could push because he was at the front. Here, he was slightly more bottled up. It looked like he was going to fall out of the points at one point, but the scrap between, I think it was Lindblad and ironically Alex Dunn, meant that he could pull away.
Well, it was Pepe Marti. Pepe Marti had no pace in the feature race at all, and the gap that was created was from Pepe Marti's lack of pace. And I don't fully understand what happened to Pepe Marti this weekend, because he found himself in a couple of good positions, particularly in the feature race on Sunday, and he fell away over 10 seconds from the top 5, which, yeah, I don't fully understand, to be honest with you. But obviously Dunn and Lindblad, I mean, Lindblad came from the back, finished just behind him, and yeah, obviously Alex Dunn had that issue with obviously having to go into the runoff area at turn 1, turn around, and he still finished just behind Pepe Marti. So yeah, not quite sure what happened with Pepe this weekend. Obviously a bad weekend for Alex Dunn. Salvatore asks, Salvatore on our Discord channel, I should say, go and join our Discord channel if you want to join in. Never was say Mr. Hagaya. I know. We need to plug, don't we? Salvatore says, after this weekend, are Richard Verschoor and Alex Dunn's title bids over, or is it too early to count them out? Aaron's already given his answer a little bit there. He's obviously said that Richard Verschoor might have an outside chance, but probably between Fornaroli, Crawford and Browning. What are your thoughts, Martin? Do you think it's those top 3? Do you think Richard Verschoor and Alex Dunn are maybe out of the running a little bit now?
Unfortunately, I do agree with that. I think for Luke Browning, it's 27 points, which I think just about doable. You're relying on some tricky weekends for Fornaroli, but it's doable. Richard Verschoor, 37 points. It's looking less likely. I think for Verschoor, and especially for Dunn, it's incredibly disappointing, because you're looking there at 2 drivers that, especially in the first half of the season, were, I would say, the 2 quickest drivers. They were both winning multiple feature races, Dunn winning 2 of the first 4, and then Verschoor in Jeddah and in Spielberg. And things like Verschoor's double podium in Barcelona, winning the sprint, 3rd in the feature races, you're thinking this is the kind of drive from a driver who might not necessarily pull away, but be a real contender. And so if you'd have told me a few weeks ago that those 2 would have dropped out by now, then I'd have been really shocked. But I think it comes down to something we were talking about earlier in terms of this weekend was the first real mistake Fornaroli had made in terms of that incident with Dunn, and actually didn't turn out to be too consequential. Of course, Alex made a few mistakes towards the start of the season. The Sakir sprint race is one that comes to mind. Obviously, the Monaco feature race we all know about. And if you just take a couple of those mistakes out of the equation, okay, he's not quite at the top level. And of course, Monza last 2 weeks ago was not his fault whatsoever, and that was a real hammer blow for him. But he's certainly much more in the conversation without those. And then you look at Richard Verschoor. He qualified, 18th or 19th, I believe, at Imola, and then crashed out of qualifying at Monza. If he just qualifies in the top 10 for those 2 rounds, you say he might pick up a minimum of 10 points from each round. Suddenly he's right back in the fight. And it's really interesting how just those small moments, those qualifying sessions, those small mistakes have made the difference. You look at Luke Browning, Jack Crawford, Leo Fornaroli. Crawford has made up for it by winning lots of races and being incredibly quick when he is quick. He doesn't do what Verschoor has done a lot of and finishing 6th and 7th, which is great, but you need to be winning races alongside that. Crawford just wins, or, as you say, boom or bust, Aaron. And then Fornaroli, we all know about, he's not scored in 2 races and that's it. So it's been, I think that's the reason why, is just that those mistakes and that lack of consistency that the top 3 have had.
Crawford's been scoring big in feature races. I think that's his thing, in that he's won Baku and got the fastest 2 points for pole position as well. He won in Silverstone, 3rd in Budapest, 3rd in Spielberg, 2nd in Jeddah with the pole position points as well. He's scored big in the feature races, which has made a real difference for him. Obviously, Leo Fornaroli went half a season without winning, and really took off after he's picked up that win. But again, he's had 3 sprint race wins and only 1 feature race win, which has been yeah, I mean, I can't say his downfall because he's top of the championship, but Crawford has gained with those big points on feature race Sunday, hasn't he, compared to the four in a row, and Luke Browning. I want to move it on, Aaron, because we've obviously spoken about the title and the championship fight a lot. Martin alluded to it there. Josh Dirkson. What a feature race for him. Obviously coming from P15 all the way up to P2, contending for the win. I thought he was going to get Jack Crawford, as Martin said, one more lap, he probably would have done it. And he did all of that with front wing damage. I mean, I don't know if that was making the car quicker or not, but he was flying, wasn't he?
He really was. He goes so well around this Baku circuit. He said after the race, it just suits his driving style. He just gives him the confidence, and he's back on form, which is good to see because he had that good start to the season, winning the sprint race in Melbourne, and then it kind of all fell apart a little bit. The wheels have come off the wagon at AIX. They rolled into 2025 with great momentum. They'd really picked themselves off the floor last year, having been solidly back at the grid. But then they started winning races, and everyone was looking a bit more confident, and Josh was looking stronger. Then in the middle of the season, they've kind of gone away. So it's really positive to see they have bounced back. And that drive was just phenomenal, wasn't it? He said he passed like 5 or 6 cars on the opening lap, and he went up to ninth from 15th on the grid. Then he just picked them off, didn't he? Helped, of course, by Stenshaw finding the wall. But then he just found his way through. Little bit of damage. I mean, it does confuse me when these little end plates come off and they just crack on anyway. It's like, well, what's the point of them? I'm sure they're doing something, but if they can carry on and still like overtake cars and not seem to have any sort of struggle, why is it there?
Yeah,
begs that question.
If AOX turn up to Qatar with no end plates, then we'll know that they've said, oh, actually, we'll look at the data and we don't need them anymore. Get rid of them, snap them off. We'll race without them.
Yeah, exactly. Just it makes a mockery of the fact that they're there at the points. But that besides that, Dirkson put in a super drive, didn't he? And you just wonder whether I mean, we know Baku qualifying is messy. We saw in the Formula One 6 red flags, but by F1 standards, F2 was very well behaved. So, what might have been if it started a little bit higher up the grid? That race pace was really strong. Really, he could have had a few more laps to challenge Crawford. Oh, the irony of that is, they qualified higher up the grid and been involved in a lap 1 collision. So, it is what it is. So. But it's really positive to see that AIX and Josh Dirkson have managed to make that step back in the right direction, find that form again, back on the podium. That's 3 podiums in 4 races. That's a really solid effort. And he and the team should be very rightly very pleased with themselves.
Totally agree. If there was a race for social media, then AIX would win this weekend for me. Their post about a Josh 2 holiday was very funny after second place in Baku. Another driver.
I've been waiting for that for a while. They've been waiting one out.
They've been waiting for that all season, right? So funny. Another driver who had probably his best weekend in Formula 2, to be fair. Dino Beganovich, 3rd place in the feature race, winner of the sprint race on Saturday, and just an all-round brilliant weekend from Dino Beganovich, Martin. I know you spoke to him a few weeks ago. Really, really impressive weekend, and I feel like this is the Dino Beganovich that we potentially thought we might see this season off the back of an impressive run out in Qatar and Abu Dhabi last year.
Yeah, I was really impressed with Dino this weekend, and even last weekend at Monza, he had a lot of pace. At Imola, he was on pole. And there's just been those little moments all season where we thought, there's a real driver here who's got the quality to mix it with the best drivers on the grid. And it's just been a shame that he's not been able to do it more consistently. Luke Browning was actually talking in the sprint race press conference on Saturday with Dino and talking about how Dino's been unlucky. There's been issues outside his control. And it's finally all come together now that at this point he can win a race. I'm really pleased that it came together with the sprint win, with the feature race podium. There was so much to like about what he put together this weekend in terms of staying out of trouble, in terms of the raw pace, And it really gives you confidence that if he's back in F2 next season, that he might be able to put together a title charge. Now, I did say a very similar sentence to that this time last year in one of my articles, I'm sure, because of the Qatar and Abu Dhabi cameos, as you say, was so good. But I really think that given the equipment, Dino Beganovich can be one of the best drivers on the F2 grid. And I was, very impressed with him this weekend.
The speed's not ever been in doubt. I mean, you saw from his performance at Imola in qualifying to put it on pole position, it's just been that consistency. But I was having a look earlier for an article about what we learned from the weekend, and he's actually scored in all of the last, I think it's 7 races.
Yeah, it's one of the most informed drivers on the grid.
Yeah, the problem has been for him that they're not the big points. You got 7 points at Spa, 1, 7, 3, 9. But then this weekend, 10 and 15. So that's the sort of performance that he needs to be delivered. We kind of expect from him with the speed that he's got. The problem he's got is that it's a very competitive F2 field. So you can be fast all you like, but if you don't deliver in the critical moments, you'll be nowhere. And that is what the likes of Jack Crawford, the likes of Leonardo Fornaroli, and the likes of Luke Browning have done this season. When their moment has come, they have been there to scoop it all up and take the big prize and say, thanks very much. I'll see you next week, guys. You've got to be there to deliver. And Dino did that this weekend because he was second on the grid. Sadly, Rafael Villagomez didn't make a very good start. I was excited to see what he could do at the front on Saturday. But for Dino, that was absolutely paradise because the Red Seas parted, through he went, and he managed that race beautifully. But his race actually on Sunday, I thought, was better. Coming through, stealthing his way to that podium. There was no fluke about it. It wasn't, you've only been reversed to the front of the grid. No, he earned himself that podium. That was a very solid effort.
No, I totally agree. And I think Dino and Gabriele Mini, who also had probably his best weekend in Formula 2 this weekend, I think both of those drivers, if they return like we expect them to next season, both of those drivers, I would expect anyway to have much better seasons and to be title contenders for F2 in 2026. So, shout out to both of them because they have really good weekends. And another driver who had a really good weekend on debut was Martinia Stenshaw. Salvatore on Discord said, DNF aside, it was crazy that Stenshaw was P2 with a car that had only scored 2 points in the whole championship. And I totally agree. Obviously, a great start on Saturday in his his debut race, if you like, up to P2 before he had an engine issue in the sprint race and then competing at the front yet again on Sunday, Aaron. He was, before that incident, he looked at home straight away, didn't he?
It was very impressive because he's had some moments in F3, and I think Martin probably follows F3 slightly closer than at least I do. I do watch F3 when it's not on at the crack of dawn in the UK on a Sunday morning. So, he's had his moments in F3, but we see this from time to time, don't we? We see drivers just plonked into an F2 car and suddenly they go from being, look at Alex Dunn. He was a bit nowhere in F3 last year. Plonked him into the road in this year and off he goes. And I think Stenshaw had a similar sort of experience. The really gutting thing is that he was having 2 cracking races and he didn't get to the flag. It's just like, come on. I felt a huge amount of sympathy for him, but I actually think he's going to have a few team bosses up and down the grid reconsidering their driver options for not least 2026, but for Qatar and Abu Dhabi, thinking, actually, could this guy help us scoop, a few more points and a position in the championship? Could we sign him up for 2026 and we give him the car? Can he challenge for wins and maybe even a title? I mean, it's all possible because he's made this big statement, even though he's come away with no points, which is a really bizarre situation, isn't it?
No, for sure, definitely. Martin, we've had a question on Discord that says, can we consider Martinia Stenshaw as one of the title contenders for 2026, given what he's done in his first weekend of Formula 2? Obviously, Aaron said, I know you watch Formula 3, I watch Formula 3 as well. I don't think anyone's ever necessarily doubted Martinia Stenshaw's ability. Obviously, vice champion in Freca when Kimi Antonelli won it a couple of years ago. I think he just didn't particularly shine in Formula 3. But as Aaron says, there's some drivers who don't necessarily shine in Formula 3. Alex Dunn is a great example. And they step into Formula 2 and they just look at home. And is that potentially going to be the case with Martinius Stenshaw?
Yeah, I think as you say, it was a difficult year for him, especially last season in Formula 3, only getting 5-point scoring finishes when after he had that Freca season with Kimi Antonelli, you maybe expected a bit more, but 5th place this season, 2 wins, another 3 second places on top of that, and it was quite impressive. And then to come in into a car that hasn't been performing as well this season and put in the kinds of fleeting performances that he did on all 3 days of the event was really impressive. And I think it goes back to a point that Gabriele Mini made on Friday, and he said that the driver around this sort of circuit, the driver can make a bit more of a difference than perhaps on a conventional track. And it makes you think perhaps, that lack of pace that Trident have had across the season, really, of course, mainly on the conventional circuits, it's very difficult for a driver to make the difference at a track like Barcelona or Hungary, where it's, different sweeping corners, low speed corners, but a very normal track. And there's not that very much, you can't brake later and be quicker because the braking point is the same. It's you can't take those risks. Whereas at Baku, you kind of can. And I wonder if that's what Stenshaw was able to do in that Trident that maybe led him to outperform the car in the same way that realistically Mini did in qualifying on Friday in terms of outperforming his Prema, and really putting that car in a position where it maybe hasn't been all season. I think that the one thing for Stenshaw is I'm interested to see how he would go on and manage that early race pace. The issue with the mechanical issue that he had on Saturday and the crash on Sunday, which Marty was adjudged to be at fault for, was we didn't get to see him managing tyres and making a pit stop. But we can worry about all that later. I enjoyed the overtaking. I enjoyed the speed. Thank you, Martinez, and hopefully see you next year.
A couple more questions then from the Discord. So Ryan asks, why was Roman Stanek not penalised more for that mistake in qualifying? Who wants to take that one? Aaron's.
Well, he was banged to rights on it. I don't think they could do much different than what they did. They deleted his lap time. They gave him a 5th place.
It's a given mistake though, no? To not look at oncoming traffic. That's a big one.
Having seen it from a different angle where he is rejoining the circuit, we've got to remember these drivers are buried in the middle of these cars. The sides are really high to protect their heads, and they've got the halo as well. I guess so. The only mitigation I can give Roman Stanek is he completely did not see John Bennett at all until they were wheel to wheel, and he went, "Oh dear," and too late. That said, it's a qualifying lap. He knows that there are cars behind him. He's gone off at turn 1. He should probably just stay out of the way and not rejoin the track because his lap is done anyway. So it's a tricky one. I didn't necessarily have a problem with the penalty. I thought, well, it deserves a penalty. It got a penalty, and really it was an 8-place grid drop because I think he lost 3 positions because of losing his best lap. So
it ruined his weekend, really.
Yeah, it did. It did the damage it needed to do in terms of giving him enough positions to make up. I mean, if it's Baku, you can start 17th and win the race.
Yeah. No, I know. Yeah. I agree with everything you've just said. I'm playing devil's advocate by asking that question, but I agree that it was it proved the point it needed to prove, didn't it, if you like? So, yeah, absolutely agree. Another question from Ilvia on Discord. Hope I pronounced that right. With Leo Fornaroli leading the championship and showing a strong racecraft, could he still get a seat in Formula 1? Martin, I'll come to you for that one. From what we're hearing now, I think obviously the Cadillac seats have been taken. I think the Alpine seat sounds like it's going to be between Franco Colapinto and Paul Aron by the sounds of it. The Red Bull seat is obviously, or the RB seat is still up for grabs, but that sounds like that's going to be someone within the Red Bull pool, whether that's Lindblad or whether that's Tsunoda going back to RB or whether it's Hadjar and Lawson staying at RB. There's not really anywhere for Leo Fornaroli to go, is there? If it is going to be F1, then it's going to be a reserve role, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's an effect of what happened last year when we had loads and loads of F2, or in terms of Colapinto and Lawson, former F2 drivers coming up, taking their seats, and we had this whole massive crop of rookies. And then, of course, there's the knock-on effect of that is going to be in the later years is going to be less coming up because the seats are filled with guys that have just got there. I think it's difficult for Leo because he's the reigning F3 champion. It looks like he might be the F2 champion, certainly the favourite at this moment in time, the clear favourite. But it's difficult to see where that path is at the moment. That's not to say that I don't think there is a path potentially to a reserve seat like a Alpine. Paul Aron showed enough in his first year last season to get a reserve seat, and as you say, he's potentially up for that Alpine seat. Mercedes are losing a reserve driver in Valtteri Bottas. Could Leo Fornaroli go there, given his consistency and all that kind of thing? It's very plausible that there's a lot of different reserve options for him. But in terms of full-time race seat, I think he might have to look at perhaps Formula E or the World Endurance Championship, just given that I think the biggest opportunity was Cadillac for him or Crawford. And that has, unfortunately, by this point, long since passed, with them understandably taking up two experienced drivers.
I've just been thinking of a pathway into Formula One for Leo Fornaroli.
Go on, Azza.
It's interesting that you mentioned a German car manufacturer there. Who's arriving on the grid next year? Audi. So I know they have their seats filled. They've got the incredibly experienced Nico Hülkenberg, but who have they got alongside him? They've got former Invicta driver Gabriel Bortoleto, F3 and F2 champion back to back. He's becoming a very former Trident, yeah, and he's becoming a very handy little driver, isn't he? It's like we've seen this all before in F3 and F2. So at some point, Hülkenberg has to retire and stop coming back. So Bortoleto starts leading that team. What if Audi pick up Leo Fornaroli as their reserve driver for 2026? They give him some FP1s. He goes and does maybe a few bits and pieces elsewhere. And then when Hülkenberg decides to call it a day, Fornaroli steps into that role alongside Bortoleto. They already know each other fairly well. So, there's a bit of camaraderie there. He'll be able to help him on his way, and he'll be within that team. And I think Audi will want consistent drivers who are going to give them results and give them that sort of stability. Yes, you need someone who's got speed, and they both have it, but consistency for a team that's just starting to put itself together with title aspirations, then you can start finding that driver with ultimate world champion potential. And it might even be that Leo Fornaroli or Gabriel Bortoleto becomes that driver. Yeah. Just a theory.
No, I totally agree, Aaron. And I think, we all know that Gabby and Leo are good mates from their Trident days of being teammates in Formula 3. And I'm sure that Gabby Bortoleto will be saying to the guys at Audi that this guy is the real deal. He could be a really good driver. So I could absolutely see that happening. And who knows? I think I'm right by saying that Bortoleto is still technically on a piece of string from McLaren. McLaren get the right. If Oscar Piastri or Lando Norris were to move on, then they get the first call on Gabby Bortoleto. I think I'm right by saying that. So it could be that if one of those moved on, for example, at the end of 2026, that Gabby Bortoleto is the one that moves on, and Leo Fornaroli could be a good replacement. The only caveat to that, I'd say, and this is all hypothetical, and we're really talking deep,
but down the road
we are. Oh yeah, the only hurdle I would see for Leo Fornaroli going to Audi would be Freddie Slater. But that's a whole new conversation for another podcast, that one. So, last question then is from also on the Discord. Definitely get involved in the Discord chat, by the way. Come and join our Discord if you want to ask some questions from the podcast, because we take all of our podcast questions from our Discord channel. This one is, what do you make of Villa Gomez's improvements over the last couple of rounds? Can he keep the momentum and fight with the big boys in the final two races? Aaron, what are your thoughts on that?
I've been really impressed with Rafa's improvements not just over the last few races, but this season. You know, this is his third year in F2, and he really looks like he's almost come of age. He's using that experience to lead the VAR team as best as he can, and he's delivered some really excellent results. Obviously, the P3 in Spain in the sprint race, where they capitalized on the situation, and sometimes that's what you need to do. Use a little bit of that experience, that awareness, and go, let's roll the dice. And it paid off handsomely. The performance in Monza was excellent, delivering a 4th place there. And qualifying in the top 10, he really should have had a really good opportunity to score some points this weekend, but he didn't quite come off, which was a shame. But I think I've been really impressed with him. He's one of those drivers who's kind of gone a little bit under the radar up until now, and you're just starting to see him put himself above the parapet and go, hello, I'm doing really well too. And I think it's absolutely right that he gets noticed and gets the plaudits for it.
Martin, agree?
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think there's been that upturn from Van Amersfoort generally. I think John Bennett could have qualified a lot higher than he did if he hadn't been taken out, as we were discussing earlier, by Roman Stanek in qualifying. You see 18 points for Rafa Villagomez in the last 2 rounds, which, let's be honest, if you said at the beginning of the season Rafa's going to do that, then you might have been a little bit surprised. And so I think it's a really strong development for him. You look at the kind of drivers in the championship that he's ahead of now: Oliver Goethe, Kushmaini, Ritomo Miata, drivers that we know have a lot of talent, and drivers that all at one point we've thought of as potentially, you know, top 5 at the very, very, very least, top 10 drivers in Formula 2. And he's beating them, and I think it's a really strong development from Rafa, and I've been really impressed in the last couple of rounds.
Yeah, totally agree. Interested to see if he comes back next season or not. Let's take a look at the championship standings before we go then. Leo Fornaroli retains his lead at the top of the championships. However, Jack Crawford is hot on his tail after a feature race win this weekend. 19 points is the gap. Difficult weekend for Luke Browning. He remains 3rd place. And Richard Verschoor and Alex Dunn round out the top 5. And the team standings? The gap at the top is closing. High Tech moved to within 12 points of Invicta in the fight at the top of the standings. Only 8 points for Campos this weekend. Difficult weekend for them. They sit 3rd. Dams and MP are 4th and 5th. Okay, that's all we got time for today. If you've enjoyed the show, make sure you give it a like. Really appreciate all of your support. Subscribe for more Formula 2 content over the next few weeks, and keep an eye out on our social media channels as well. Got potentially a couple of driver interviews happening between now and Qatar, so keep your eyes peeled for those as well. But from me, Fraser Ford, and all of us here at Inside F2, we'll see you next time.